If they ready, they mouth. Then they looking for trouble. Ran right up in the knowledge. Now they packing a huddle. Now they know we can fight. Content give it every week. Me and your she mine. Keep on bringing the heat. Now they know that we hitting. And they know we ain't quitting. Yo, she might be jigging. Keep on bringing and giving. Unity, unity, unity. Cause they know we ain't stopping. And they know they got problems. And they ran out of options. But we know we got a problem. Can't let it go unsolved. Great race on Afrocentric history, we seen them all. Karma is karma. I say what I say, I hear the wall. Till I see y'all fall off, then I bring y'all up on note. I'm back up on my Clyde winners. Clyde winners, 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 divine winners, Clyde winners, Clyde winners, Clyde winners. I'm with you, ride with you. Master teacher, create master, Clyde winners. Give respect to the elders, Clyde winners. Somebody out there looking for me. Yeah. Somebody out there looking for me. I think there's somebody out there looking for me. I think there's somebody out there looking for me.
I've not made a story, I've not bragged, I've not cursed, I've not defiled, I've not confounded truth, I've not cursed the God.
Somebody out there looking for me.
Dr. Winters has illustrated that Africans have been settling the New World and building new civilizations and cultures in the Americas and around the world for the past 100,000 years. Dr. Winters has published and written numerous anthropological, linguistics, education, and population genetics articles. Many of these articles have appeared in peer-reviewed journals and online. His work has appeared in the Journal of Black Studies, Afrique-Historique, Journal of African Civilization, Adolescence, International Review of Education, Thresholds in Education, TC Record, Bioessays, International Journal of Human Genetics, and PLOS Genetics, to name a few. He has published over 40 books, including Atlantis in Mexico, The Mande in the Ancient Americas, We Are Not Just Africans, and African Empires in Ancient America. For more of Dr. Clyde Winters, check out Yoshima Gumroad page, and that will lead you to the master himself, Dr. Clyde Winters.
What up, though? What up, though? What up, though? Hey, family. I am excited. I am so excited. I'm so excited because the fact is that I'm with you guys. And because I'm with you guys, I'm excited. Listen, when I come here every Thursday and I'm here talking with the family, it gives me a very great high. Yes, it gives me a high. And the reason that I get a high off of this is because the fact, in a sense, is that you're allowing me to be able to talk to you guys. You know, today I'm wearing this cartouche. or sin, And I'm very excited about this because, see, this was given to me, and it's a cartouche, and maybe because I'm the pharaoh of research. And what it is that some of my students got together, and they gave me this cartouche. It's very beautiful to me, and what it is that it's a beautiful chain, and then on the cartouche it has my name inscribed. Winters. And this was very. It made me feel very good, and the reason that it made me feel very good is that I've taught four research classes so far, and I've been very happy, and I've enjoyed teaching my students. But they really surprised me when they sent this to me a couple of months ago, and they sent this to me. And what made it so fantastic is that it wasn't bought by just one group of my students. It was several different classes, and these guys that got together, they had a WhatsApp, and they got together, and they all contributed to send me this beautiful chain and this sin or cartouche. It's very inspiring. It makes you feel what it does. It makes you feel that maybe in a sense, sharing is caring. Last night we had a discussion, me and Eve, and in the discussion we tried to determine, is sharing caring? Is sharing caring? How you doing, JP, Joan, Caramonte? What up, though? Adam Byers and Craig Hawkins. What up, though? To everybody. How you guys doing? I'm so happy to see you guys here, and I hope JP that I can. Peace, Dr. Winters. This is going to be a great lecture. Thank you. I hope it can be a great lecture, And to you, Joan, hello, Dr. Winters and family. Yes, she's talking to you guys too, because you come every week, and this is quite gratifying, Adam Barr said, "What up, though? What up, though?" And Craig Hawkins. The B1 family, one love. This is it. This is one love. You see. How you doing, Mike David? And the thing is, this is that. What up, though, to you too. And what made it so important is that, sometimes you forget, and sometimes we forget that that people can really want to show you how they feel about you. How you doing, Jalen Prasad? But when my students sent this to me, I was quite gratified. They surprised me because they surprised the hell out of me. How you doing, Patrick Lumumba? And I was so surprised. And the thing that surprised me was that they took the time to plan, contact each other, and send this to me. So I wear this with honor, and so maybe I'll have to be the pharaoh of research. Yoshimod says I'm the grandfather of research. Maybe I'll become the pharaoh. That's with an Indian accent, and many of us forget. Many of us don't understand Buddhism. Many traditions that exist in India today came from Africa. How you doing, CGI kid? And that's what we're talking about. B1 family, we're talking about, the Proto-Sahara. I've always been very, very, very excited about this. Mr. Trendy 90, this is a very good. He says, Mr. Trendy 90 says, can you explain how and where exactly Dravidians evolved in the Sahara? How do both Dravidians and Niger-Congo speakers have sickle cell with little to no genetic admixture? It's a lot. They share a lot of genes, man. Especially R11 and M1. They share a whole lot of genes. I've written not hundreds of papers. I've written tens of papers on Dravidian linguistics and Dravidian DNA, and they share a lot of it. But I'm going to talk about it. But see, what many people don't understand is that we're always concerned about this hair thing. We're always concerned about kinky hair versus straight hair, and so then we assume in a sense that when we look at everybody in India that they all have straight hair, which is true for many people. There's also some Dravidians that have kinky hair, and so there's not just one group of Black people on the planet, But see, the Dravidians or the ancient Tamil and Telugu, they originally lived in the Nile Valley. Just about everybody lived in the Nile Valley. They built the ancient civilizations. But what happened is this: is that, you know, at one time there was an ice age in the Atlas Mountains, and during this ice age, there's a very good possibility that some people may have attained straight hair. But we know the Australians, they have straight hair. We know that some of the people, some Fulani, some Somalis, they have straight hair. So that whole thing about the straight hair, that is something in a sense that people have to get over. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to, in a sense, explain to you why there's this relationship. In fact, if you check out my article, a paper I wrote on the Niger-Congo languages, you'll see that I classify, you know, Tamil and some of the other Dravidian languages as members of the Niger-Congo group of languages. And this is basically because the fact, in a sense, is that they share so many different word vocabulary items, grammatical structure, and stuff like that. But see, the Proto-Sahara is very interesting to me because when I first started doing my research back in the day, I wanted to look at history based upon the research of Anta-Diop. And Anta-Diop, he had shown that language, when you study various languages, that by studying these languages, you can see relationships. And so what I wanted to do is that I wanted to study the languages and I wanted to see this relationship. And so what I found is this. When I wrote my master's thesis was called Zan to Zan. And the reason I called it Zan to Zan is because of the fact that, yes, we knew about the Zangians that lived in East Africa, but there was also many Zangians who were, in a sense, who were also situated in various parts of Asia. Because of the fact that they were situated in various parts of Asia, what I did, in a sense, is that I discussed these various groups in my I discussed these various groups in my various papers that I wrote. And the reason I discussed these various groups is because the fact is that I'd recognized early that that there was a relationship between Tamil and many African languages. You know, in fact, many people don't know this, but Tamil is still being spoken in Africa. Yes, Tamil is still spoken in Africa, but and so then just like JP said, JP, she's JP made. I'm half Dravidian, and most of my family has straight hair but dark skin. True, and so the thing is, this is that people are always confused because the thing is that they want everything to be perfect. They want our understanding of what we consider to be reality. But often, in a sense, is that the truth is a little bit more detailed, a little bit more nuanced. I'm doing a presentation tonight, and tomorrow I'm going to do another presentation tomorrow night at 7 p.m. that you'll find also interesting. Well, it's a lot of slides, so we'll get it started now. And I want to get started now so that we can have maybe some time to answer the questions. I hope that you guys will, in a sense, have some questions. Say the questions for the end, then we'll get into it. The Proto-Sahara land, the white man knew nothing about. Yes. Europeans, in a sense, they like to make it appear as though they understand everything. They know every aspect of history. They know everything. But in reality, sometimes they fail to really look at the research, because the thing is, this is that certain things they don't want to put out. They don't want you to know, in a sense, that at one time during the Green Sahara, there was a great civilization that existed. This great civilization was called by the people who lived during the time, they called it the Ma civilization. But I like to call it the Proto-Sahara because this civilization existed when the Sahara was green. You can go to my Patreon to see the slides. Please join my Patreon. My Patreon members, they support me, and they allow me to be able to do this research. What I mean by that is that much of the latest material is either behind a paywall if it's an article or a journal or a newspaper article. So you had to pay money for these things. Or often I might have to buy one of the latest books that's published on a particular thing. And by being able, in a sense, to buy these books, being able, in a sense, to get articles that are behind a paywall, this is made possible because my Patreon members support me. They give me a lot of their financial support that allows me to be able to bring to you every week these various lectures, and sometimes maybe some, at random lectures, but usually every Thursday I try to do a presentation. And that's made possible because of my Patreon. And in fact, my Patreon members, they sometimes give me ideas that end up being some of the presentations that I make on a Thursday. So please join my Patreon. Please support me. And, understand that I'm here for you, but it's you, family, that allow me to do what I'm doing. You're on my YouTube channel. I've got over 300 videos here. I've got videos here on every aspect of Black history. I have at least what 10 or 15 videos that deal strictly with Dravidian history or Tamil history. You see, so check out my the videos on this site. Please check out these videos. Please support them. Right now, in a sense, join, subscribe and click the bell so that whenever I'm about to do a lecture, do a presentation, you'll be able to gain access to it. So subscribe, press that bell, so you're able, in a sense, to know when I'm about to do another presentation. You can order my books at Amazon.com. Today we're mainly talking about the ancient world. You can get my book, The Ancient Black Civilizations of Asia. And then you can get my Black History Gems essays. My Black History Gems essays, volumes 1 and volume 2, what make them significant is that they also give you the latest research up to 2022, the latest research up to 2022 relating to Black civilizations around the world. And of course, my book, The World History of the Black Race. This is a book that you should get because it will explain to you and discuss every Black civilization that I've known that existed on the planet Earth. Today we're going to talk a lot about language because, as I said earlier, I used to do a lot of comparative linguistic research, and many of my articles appeared in many linguistic journals, especially the International Journal of Dravidian Linguistics. I published a lot of articles there. And I published some in PLOS. So I've done a considerable amount of comparative linguistic research. My book, Before Egypt, the Ma Confederation, Africa's First Civilization. In this book, you're going to find out all about the Proto-Sahara and the Ma civilization. And so you can get this book and learn it up and learn more about it. In my book, African Origin of World Writing Systems, I discuss how the research shows that the first writing systems had to have appeared in Africa. And if you purchase this book, African Origin of World Writing Systems, you're going to find out about not only how the writing systems that people use today and use in the past originated in Africa. You'll also see, in a sense, information on various writing systems around the world. In my book, Archaeological Decipherment of Ancient Writing Systems, in this book, I explain how I deciphered the Indus Valley writing, Proto-Sumerian, and Proto-Elamite, the Meroitic script, and the Grecian script. And so in my book, Archaeological Decipherment of the Ancient Writing Systems, you'll find out how I did it. And one of the reasons I was able to do this is because there is in a sense a certain area. There's a certain trait that many Black civilizations have, and that's what's called first sight consciousness. And what first sight consciousness is that because of the fact that they had so many common origin in the Green Sahara, they in a sense have similar writing systems, similar scripts, similar languages, and that allowed me to do the decipherment. In African historical linguistics, this book is very good. And this book not only explains to you how to do comparative linguistic research, what it also does in a sense is that it explains to you why. It explains to you why I'm able to use contemporary speech, contemporary vocabulary of African and Tamil, the Dravidian language Tamil, to read these ancient scripts. And what I do is that I explain to you how Anti-Diop discussed this whole idea of linguistic continuity. And his theory of linguistic continuity was that because African civilizations change slower over time, then they're able, in a sense, to maintain certain societal practices, for maybe thousands of years. So get this book, African Historical Linguistics, if you're interested in understanding how to use the comparative method to study African and Dravidian languages. The good thing about this book, African Historical Linguistics, is that I look at comparative linguistics. I'm the only person that looks at comparative linguistics from the perspective of people, in a sense, who have spoken African and Dravidian languages. Very important, you see. It's very important because, see, what I've done is that I've been able to show that you can use many of the techniques that they use to study what's called Indo-European, that we have our own traditions that allow us to be able to examine ancient Dravidian languages and ancient African languages. So this book, African Historical Linguistics, get it. My book, Egyptian Language, The Mountains of the Moon, Niger-Congo Speakers, and the Origin of Egypt. In this book, I talk about the comparison between the ancient Egyptian language, Meta-Neter, to the various Niger-Congo languages. Because what I found is that Egypt was a Pan-African civilization. It was a B1 civilization. What I mean by that is that we often look at Egypt and we think that Egypt, in a sense, was just a unitary state, but Egypt in reality was a federation, and that in the various nomads, or what Egyptians call sipats, the various nomads or the various cities along the Nile, these were cities that were occupied by people that not only, in a sense, worship their own gods, they also spoke their own languages. And when Egypt, in a sense, went into decline, these people migrated into West Africa. They migrated into Central Africa. And so then, and by looking at this, getting this book, Egyptian Language, The Mountains of the Moon, Niger-Congo Speakers, and the Origin of Egypt, you begin to see why Anti-Diop and Theophile Obianga were able to show a comparison between ancient Egyptian and, in a sense, in the case of Obianga, the Bantu languages, and Anti-Diop, he did studies with Wolof. You see, in this Egyptian language, I show that you can also compare the ancient Egyptian languages and Niger-Congo languages, and I include in this a discussion of the Mandi languages and also Tamil. So again, Egyptian Language, The Mountains of the Moon. Check it out. All these books can be purchased at Amazon.com. And I'm really proud of my latest book. My latest book is History and Culture of the Black Aboriginals in America. I am so proud of this book. What makes me proud of this book is that it is the only book. It is the only book, 489 pages. I repeat, it's 489 pages, and it's the only book that really discusses the history and culture of the various Black Aboriginal tribes that were existing in America when the Europeans came to this continent, you see. Now there's some controversy, and some of the Red Indians, they're trying to get upset, and they're trying to say that we're eliminating them. No, we're not trying to eliminate. I'm not trying to eliminate them, but it was already Black Indians here 94,000 years. I repeat, 94,000 years before the Red Indian showed up. The Red Indian is very recent to this continent. And in my book, History and Culture of the Black Aboriginals in America, I discussed our culture, the culture of the Aboriginal people, and their history. I also discussed the religion. I discuss, in a sense, how we build stone pyramids. Yes. You can't find stone pyramids in America today, but when you read the literature, you'll find that the settlers, when they first were settling the United States, they saw these stone pyramids, they saw these stone walls, they saw these stone roads. And in History and Culture of the Black Aboriginals in America, I present this information. And so I think this is a book that everybody, I think, should have, because many of us have an Aboriginal background. For example, in my family, yes, I can go back to those members of my family that was on the plantation up to the 1860s, 1820s, 30s, whatever. But I also, in a sense, we also have a Choctaw heritage, and this Choctaw heritage goes back, in a sense, to the fact that when my mom and dad mixed, and even on the plantation, the first chattel slaves, yes, the first chattel slaves, the first personal property of the planters, not only down in the South but also in New England. People forget that the original 13 colonies, all the way into New England down to Virginia, was basically full of nothing but slaves that Europeans were working. But see, we often, in a sense, assume that the only slavery only existed in the Deep South, and that's wrong. It did exist throughout this country, and many, in a sense, Aboriginal Black people who fought in wars against the Europeans, the British and the Dutch. Once they lost these wars, they were enslaved. And when they were enslaved, they were made chattel slaves. Get this book, History and Culture of the Black Aboriginals in America. Then you'll, in a sense, understand more about the Aboriginals, our history, our culture, our civilization. And you'll also understand the technology contributions that we had when the European came here. Get this book, History and Culture of the Americas. The Proto-Sahara land the white man knew nothing about. Yes, he knew nothing about this. Because the fact is that he refuses to really research our history. He doesn't want to research our history. He doesn't really want you to know who you are or what you are. And therefore, he only gives you little specks of knowledge. But you can take these specks, if you really, in a sense, look at these little bits of knowledge that they produce, and you really examine it in detail, you can use this knowledge to really understand more about our history. What is FBA? Well, hey, I'm an FBA, so I'll explain. FBA is not a group. FBA is not an organization. FBA is a lineage. A lineage is lineal descent from an ancestor, ancestry or pedigree. As a result, we are descendants of the Africans and Aboriginal Blacks who built the United States. B1 is acknowledging your Black African ancestry not heritage. We must be race men and women proud of our culture and African Black ancestry. We have to really accept the fact that the only way that Europeans were able, in a sense, to take over Africa, were able to take over North America, and even able to take over India, was that you had these various Black tribes fighting each other. And because these Black tribes were fighting each other, instead of, in a sense, mounting a united front against the Europeans were able, in a sense, to dominate these lands. They were able to rule these people and dominate them for years and years and years. You see, that's how they made Africa and the colonies by 1899. That's how they've stolen our land over here in North America, and now they've even made us forget that we were, in a sense, the original people here. You see, they made us believe that the original people here were red men instead of, in a sense, the copper-colored Black races, you see. But they were able to do this because we weren't B1. We didn't unify around the fact, in a sense, that we should be unified based upon not just our color, but just the whole fact is that we were the first frequency. We were the first creators of civilization, you see. But our ancestors didn't see it that way. You see, whereas the Dutch and the British and the French, they could unify and they could, in a sense, dominate the Black Aboriginals because the Yuchi, the Yamasi, Tuscarora, and so on and so forth, they were fighting each other, you see, and that's how they lost the land. We have been taught a history of lies, a history where we are the victims of white racism. Yes, this history of lies, the greatest lies, is the fact, in the sense, that you've always been a slave. Or if you haven't been a slave, you've always been dependent upon Europeans for your survival. You've always been dependent on the Europeans for everything that you have or everything that you want to have, you see. And this is a lie, you see. We have had great agency in our history. The Europeans have not ruled the world for 2,000 years. You see? In fact, Europeans have only ruled the world mainly since 1492, and some of the rulers during that period were black. But here's the whole point: is that although many of these people may have been black, they didn't see themselves as B1. They saw themselves as members of nations. May it be an Indian nation here, Yamasee, Yuchi, Cherokee, Choctaw, see? Or French, German, Portuguese. So they didn't see themselves as being B1. But today we know through hindsight, we can see that by being B1, by unifying around, in a sense, those characteristics that allow you to have a common maybe origin or a common appearance, that these things in a sense can help you to maybe have a much more greater sense of unity. As a rule, under white supremacy, history is whatever white people say it is. Even though archaeologists have found ancient artifacts of blacks, the white supremacists demand that you ignore what you can see with your own eyes and replace it with images they make up. The Ma Confederation, yes. The Ma Confederation. When I began my research, as I told you before, my master's thesis was Zan to Zan, and I was basically interested in the relationship between those black people that lived in Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia, and the black people who lived in the Swahili cities along the East Coast of the African East Coast. And these, in a sense, that was part of Swahili civilization. Okay, that was all fine. But then I became interested in the Olmecs. When I became interested in the Olmecs, I began to notice, in a sense, that, Leo Viner wrote a book called Africa and the Discovery of America. When he wrote this book, Africa and Discovery of America, he noticed in a sense that the Tushla statuette, which was a statuette that was made by the Olmecs, he noticed that the writing on the Tushla statuette, was identical to the writing used by the Mandi or the Mandingo people in West Africa. So he said it was a relationship. And so what I did, in a sense, I said, aha, if he says it's a relationship, I'm going to try to see if there's any writing systems from West Africa, and if these writing systems, in a sense, are identical to the glyphs or signs that the Olmecs had. And then I was able to find what was called a Vice script. And so then when I found the Vice script, and I found out that many of the authors of the Vice script said that it was an ancient writing system. And then I noticed that the Vice script had the same signs as what we call the Libico-Berber script. And the Libico-Berber script is supposed to go back to maybe 1200 BC, 1400 BC, and that it was used by people in West Africa. And they left these inscriptions all the way from the Niger Valley, all the way to what we call modern Libya today, to a civilization that was called Garama. And that many of these inscriptions were left along the so-called chariot routes. Back in the day, just like nowadays, people want to get a Honda or a Honda or a Ford or a Chevrolet. Back in the day, people, in a sense, traveled in carts. Yes, Africans had the wheel. I know the Europeans teach you that Africans didn't have the wheel. That's another big lie. But they had chariots, and they would ride these chariots from the Niger Valley all the way to Libya. And so then when I read the literature, I said, damn, that's interesting. But then all of a sudden, while I was reading all of these various books on the West African, the West African peoples, the Mandi and whatever, Fulani, whatever, it came to my attention that all of these civilized people said they belonged to an ancient civilization, which they called the Ma Confederation. And it was the study of the Ma Confederation that you know led to me understanding the Proto-Saharan civilization. The Proto-Saharans claim descent from the Ma, or Fish Confederation. The Ma Confederation includes the ancient Egyptians, Elamites, Dravidians, Manding, and Sumerians. In honor of the great ancestor Ma, they worshiped a god called Amun, Amun, or Amma. In honor of this great ancestor, the descendants of the Proto-Saharans use the term Ma to denote greatness or highness. E.g., the Mandingo, they use Maga, and the Dravidians had Ma, but all of these terms denote greatness or highness. Other Proto-Saharan tribes claim direct descent from the great Ma, founder of the Fish Confederation. For example, the Manding call themselves Ma Indi, children of Ma, while the Sumerians call themselves Magari, exalted God's children. See, one of the reasons that they identified with fish is because the fact is that after the Great Flood, much of the surface area in many parts of the world was underwater. Because of the fact that much of the surface area in many parts of the world was underwater, what they said is that they said that they had to get these fishmen. But this identification of fishmen was not so much that they were fish, but these were engineers, great engineers, who were able, in a sense, to think of ways to pump the water off the land, so people, in a sense, could live on more surface area instead of having to live on so much water. Because of the fact, in the sense, that many of these ancient civilizations had lived during a time when there was much weather, when there were lots of floods, you found that these ancient people, in a sense, they built their cities and they built their towns, they built their homes on the top of mounds. And the reason that they built their homes on the top of mounds was that by building their homes on the top of mounds, that meant if there was a heavy rain or if there was some sort of flood, that the people, in a sense, could still get around, and that the people, in a sense, because their crops wouldn't be destroyed, and at the same time their crops wouldn't be destroyed, they would be safe, in a sense, from the waters that would maybe flood their houses. And so the Ma Confederation goes all the way back to this time. And as I said earlier, the people who belong to the Ma Confederation includes the Egyptians, the Elamites, Dravidians, Manding, and Sumerians. This common god was called Ma, the man-fish of Eridu in Mesopotamia and Syria, and the ithiophilic forms, the prototype of Amun in Egypt, and the goddess Meenakshi of Madura in South India, the goddess of the fish eyes, the Malabar fish bearer of Mana, and the sacred fishes of the Mapila of the west coast of the Deccan. In the language of the Manding, Ma is used to refer to the ancient inhabitants of the African continent, and the invisible spirit who inhabits the watercourses in Egypt. Mot meant divine truth and justice. Yes, 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 yes. These great architects, these great engineers, they were considered to be almost like fishmen. They were considered, in a sense, to have mastered the ability to conquer the waters, which was, abundantly applied. And so in a way, this picture, if you look at this picture is meant to represent that whole idea of these great architects and their identification with the fish, because of the fact, in the sense that they were able to like the fish, dominate the waters, and make the land much more survivable for the people. The Proto-Saharans, in honor of the great Ma, use the term Ma to denote greatness, you see. And this is very important, because, see, as I said earlier, you find when you look at the ancient Dravidians, you find, in a sense, this commonality in the names for God, The Ma element was also used in the names for their rulers, e.g. Menes of Egypt, the Manan of the Dravidians, and the Mansa of the Manding. The Maul of the Dravidians is just another form of Ma. Maul is the fish. He was the prototype of the fish god among the Pandian Tamils. Amma, Uma, Ammon, and etc. seems either referred to Mao's consort. Here again, in a sense, is a representative of how they would have seen their god. They would have seen their god as not only, in a sense, being royal, not only wearing a beautiful crown, but also having these fish fins. And he would have these fish fins because these fish fins represented his mastery over the water, you see. And so whenever we think about the ancient god Ma. And when we think about the kings of these people, we have to, in a sense, think about the fishes, because these men, these masters of the water, these masters of the land, were in a sense what? They were the new fishes. They were the fishes. They were the symbols that allowed man to conquer the land. The ancient Proto-Saharan areas that, here's a map. When we look at this map, we can see that during the Green Sahara, we find the Egyptians, the Nubia, Pandawe, and then we see a migration of these people. Some of them went west into West Africa, but not too many went into West Africa. And the reason that they didn't go into West Africa is that for much of the Neolithic, West Africa was a very impenetrable jungle. It was very deep. You can maybe go along the rivers, such as the Niger and other rivers, but for the most part, West Africa was very rich in vegetation. It was like the Amazon jungle today. It would have had a lot of insects in there, mosquitoes, and they spread disease. So what we find, in a sense, is that most of the people who lived in Africa at that time mainly were living along the Nile River, and from the Nile River they expanded in a sense out of the Saharan areas, across the Levant, across Saudi Arabia, and they began, in a sense, to migrate to other parts of the world. Usually, in a sense, the Mandi-speaking people and the Dravidians, Tamil, they usually migrated together. So when they migrated out of Africa, you find that Tamil and Mandi people, they mainly, in a sense, went into East Asia, Southeast Asia. They formed China and other places like that. But see, back in the day, you could also in a way say that much of Africa was really, in a sense, much of Africa was a fertile area, it was a fertile crescent. There were so many. Here you can look on this map under the bottom. You can see the rivers and lakes, some of the rivers and lakes that dotted Africa at this time. And see, many of the people, the Proto-Saharan people, they lived in the highlands. And the reason they lived in the highlands is, as I told you earlier, the valleys, in a sense, were mainly were so watery. It was very difficult for the people to be able, in a sense, to really live in the valleys because of the high water table and the abundance of rain and things like that. So most of the Proto-Saharans lived in the highlands. They lived in the highlands of the Hagad, the Tibesi, and other parts of Sahelian Africa. There were places where people, in a sense, could live without fear of being overwhelmed by the water that was dominating much of the land. Again, you can use these books to learn about the language, learn about what was going on during that time. Again, before Egypt, the Macan Federation, archaeological decipherment of ancient writing, the Egyptian language and the Niger-Congo languages, and again, African historical linguistics. And the beautiful thing about African historical linguistics is that it teaches you how to understand and how to do comparative linguistic research. And I give examples from African languages and from Dravidian languages, mainly Tamil, so that you can, in a sense, see how you can apply these same rules that linguists use every day to study European languages. You can apply many of these techniques, but it has to be some kind. It's a little bit tricky, but this book will help you to be able, in a sense, to do comparative linguistics in relationship to Dravidian languages, primarily Tamil, and also, in a sense, Niger-Congo languages. The goddess Amun is the most ancient among the Proto-Saharans. This goddess has many names, including Athene or Neith, daughter of Poseidon, god of the sea. Again, you see this reference to the great fish man, Poseidon, god of the sea, and he has, in a sense, his instruments, war instruments. And Demeter, the mare-headed patroness. The mother goddess Ammon of Libya, and her cult center was at an oasis of Silwa in ancient Egypt. Ammon was depicted as a ram with spears. The god Ammon was taken to Egypt during the New Kingdom. Yes. Again, we see this reference. We see this whole idea of the fishes, and being able, in a sense, to master. Because, see, many of the earliest kings, they were, in a sense, not only great fighters, great warriors. Many of them also had an extreme sense of engineering, and because of their sense of engineering, and their ability, in a sense, to build monuments and build structures, for the community that could keep down the waters, made them highly valued. You see, but again, we see that this the fishies, the Mahed writing. Here, if you look at this comparison chart, let's go across. We can go from the Indian megalithic to Uruk. That's one of the ancient centers in Mesopotamia. Proto-Elamite, the Indus Valley, and then we go across to Murdertech, linear A, and the Manding script. And you can see how many of these writing systems, all the way from Africa to India, how these writing systems, in a sense, were writing systems that had similar signs. Many of these writing systems go back to Thinite. And these writing systems, because of the fact that the Anu people, the people we call the Pygmies today, because the Anus had a great civilization that extended all the way from the Nile Valley all the way into throughout Mesopotamia, all the way into ancient China and even ancient America, and especially in Central Asia. They had this writing system, and this writing system that they used is called Thinite. And if you get my book, The Dawn of Writing, Decipherment of the Thinite Dispelio Tablet and Gobekli Tepe Pillars, this, in a sense, can allow you to be able to see how this writing goes back to 10,000 BC. Yes. Also, if you get this book, it can show you how you can read these ancient inscriptions. Again, we can read these ancient inscriptions because the fact is that Diop had this whole idea of linguistic continuity. And what he said is that people in Africa were still speaking the same languages that they had spoke for thousands of years. Whereas in Europe, every time a different nation conquered another nation, then they would force those people, in a sense, to change their language that they spoke from what was their native language to the new language of the conquerors. And so this, in a sense, made a lot of shifts in terms of European languages. In my I did a paper on this years ago, and what I showed is that many of the medieval words, the words that many of the Arabs who traveled to the various ancient civilizations like Mali in West Africa, that many of the words that they recorded, over 2,000 years ago. Well, 1,000 years ago. Yeah, about 1,000 years ago. Many of the words they recorded that are 1,000 years old are the same words being used by the Mandingo speakers today. And this is what anti-Diop taught us, is that, in a sense, is that because of this linguistic continuity, because languages don't change so much in Africa as opposed to Europe, we're able, in a sense, to see these relationships between ancient scripts. The Proto-Sahara spoke similar language. They founded the civilizations in Sumer, Elam, the Indus Valley, and the Libico-Berber Minoan civilizations. On this map, you can see that we can move from Egypt all the way to Mesopotamia. You can see Sumer and Mesopotamia, and you can also see Elam. And all of these people spoke similar languages. And I call these languages the Proto-Saharan languages, Again, as I said earlier, the Proto-Saharans lived in an environment dotted with lakes and rivers. The Dravidians and Sumerians in prehistoric times lived in Saharan Africa. These Proto-Saharans were in contact with the Manding and Sumerian speakers. I propose to use social linguistic data to discuss and outline aspects of the proto-culture of the Dravidians, Manding, and the Sumerians. These people who lived in different areas separated by thousands of miles spoke similar languages. It has long been recognized that the Dravidians in India and the Sumerians of Mesopotamia, along with the Manding of West Africa, show similar physical and cultural features. The anthropological evidence and linguistic data suggests that these people are derived from a common ancestor that separated as early as between 4,000 and 2,800 BC. The original homeland of the Dravidians, Sumerians, and Manding was Middle Africa. Therefore, I call the ancestors of these ethnic groups the Proto-Saharans. The homeland of the Proto-Saharan was the Libyan and Sudanese deserts. It was in this region between 9,000 and 6,000 BC that the elements of Proto-Saharan culture were created. In the southern Sahara during the Middle Paleolithic, the Proto-Saharans might have domesticated cattle. In Chad and Libya, the remains of cattle are associated with prehistoric hearts, dating between 7,500 and nearly 10,000 years before the present, BP. Here you can see a scene from that dates back to this period. And if you look at this picture, you can see that the people were herding cattle. You can see men, you can see women, and you can see some of them being leisurely, you know, relaxing along in a sense in this area. And you can see some of the cattle that they raised and things like that. Often wild ass, Barbary sheep, hyenas, and hare were associated with wild cattle in the Sahara. Bones of domesticated cattle have come from Saharan sites such as Tia and Torah and Nuan Muagiak. During the same period when cattle were found near hearts of Proto-Saharan settlements, these people were collecting grain. Some of the early Proto-Saharan sites show evidence of slab-lined storage pits. Often the houses during the Neolithic had large stones situated around them, around their perimeter. In this, you can look at this picture. And in this picture, you can see a representation of how these people lived in the ancient Sahara. Again, you can see the fishes, you know, in the clouds, and then also you can see the people. You can see the women around the hearth making food, cooking food for their families. The men are herding their sheep, and then we can see the beautiful god Amma. You know, Amon. We can see her in the clouds, and we can see her representing as being the protector. Yes. You know, today, growing up in a patriarchal society like America, we sometimes devalue our women. We sometimes fail to see the important role that women have always played in society, the role that women have always played in the rise of civilization. And the fact, in a sense, is that the woman who always has this ability to give the children, to nurture them, to allow them. But in this picture, in a sense, we see these people paying homage to great Amma, Amma, the hidden but always present God, the God, in a sense, that hears your prayers and, in a sense, gives you the light to move forward instead of always staying behind. Pastoralism and fishing preceded food production in the ancient Sahara. It appears that a hunter-gatherer group, which clearly specialized in the hunting of animals, as evidenced by the abundance of arrowheads, became animal herders, since they were keenly aware of the habits of game and therefore made the shift from hunter, fisher, gatherer to animal husbandry rapidly, once climatic conditions in the Sahara made it impossible to collect grains. Again, here we can see these men, and we can see some women also, but we see these men beginning, in a sense, to get these cattle. By them putting these cattle in a straight line, you see, what that is supposed to represent is how man was able, in a sense, to use their knowledge of hunting, their knowledge of, in a sense, of seeking game, to be able to have mastery over the wild herds, over these herds of cattle, which could provide the people a steady source of food. You see, this was a very dynamic discovery, because with the women collecting the grains and cereals, and the men, in a sense, having the cattle around, that meant, in a sense, that the men and the women weren't separated all the time, as men had to go further and further in search to hunt down food and find sources of food. By having cattle, they could, in a sense, slaughter the cattle. They could use the meat, in a sense, and they could take the meat and they could, put that along with the grains, and they can make a stew. And then once, in a sense, people understood how to take the grains like millet and other things to make flour, they could make the bread. And so they had full sustenance. But this came from over a period of experimentation. And during this experimentation, people learned how to develop new ways of living in what I call the Proto-Sahara. The Proto-Saharans lived on hillocks or slopes near water, but some Caspians lived on plains, which which featured lakes and marshes. Their way of life continued from the Neolithic era up to the time of the Garamantes, a group of Mandi speakers in Libya. Ceramics spread from the central and eastern Sahara into North Africa. These ceramics were of Sudanese inspiration and date back to the 7th millennium BC. Yes, yes. These pots that many of the people in the Proto-Saharans were using, they go back to 7,000 BC. This pottery was used from the Enidi to Hagar. The makers of this pottery were probably from the Sudan. The Caspian pottery tradition first appeared at Saura and later at Fort Flanders. This type of pottery probably originated at Elementaita in Kenya. You see, again, when you look at this pottery, you can see how people had advanced because originally man, in a sense, had used baskets. They used baskets to collect their food. In fact, they used baskets in a way, I think, to really make stews and stuff back in the day. If they would put the food in the basket and they would put it over a fire, higher over a fire, so that the material that made the basket wouldn't catch on fire, but just close enough that the heat from the fire could cause the liquids inside of the basket along with the meat and grain to be able to cook thoroughly. So again, the Proto-Saharans were very, very creative because see, they were finding ways to make sure that they could develop their civilization to a high degree. The Proto-Saharans used the common black and red ware that has been found from the Sudan across Southwest Africa and the subcontinent of India all the way into China. Yes, yes, yes. These people, what we know about these Proto-Saharans is that they made this pottery. They made this pottery. And this is called red and black pottery. And you're going to find that if you go to India and you try to study the ancient civilizations, you're going to find that the same red and black pottery used in the Nile Valley, you'll find examples of red and black pottery in India. Professor B.B. Lal proved conclusively that the Dravidians were genetically related to the C group people of Nubia, given the fact that both groups used 1, a common black and red ware, 2, a common burial complex incorporating megaliths and circular rock enclosures, and 3, a common form of rock-cut sepulchres. This black and red ceramic industry diffused from Nubia into Rajasthan and thence to East, Central, and South India. The earliest examples of the black and red ware common to the Proto-Saharans date to early Amrathian period, you see. But what we find in a sense is that the first people to migrate out of the Proto-Sahara were the Tamil-speaking people. And as I said earlier, the Tamil, in a sense, they migrated, across the Levant into our Central and East Asia, East Asia. But the earliest group, the next group that migrated, they migrated in a sense out of the Nile Valley, but instead of going through the Levant, what they did is that they traveled down into East Africa, and they in a sense were able to go across, and they're a landmass which used to unite India and Africa called Kumari Nadu. And these people, they migrated, and these Dravidian speakers, probably mainly Telugu, they migrated and they settled in South India. They settled in South India because they migrated across Kumari Nadu into southern India. And then that's why we see this dichotomy. Because see, the Telugu speakers, we don't really see a difference because the fact is that the writing system used by all the Dravidians at that time was based upon Tamil. Because the writing system was based upon Tamil, we assume that it was Tamil speakers in India back around 2000 BC and although 2000 BC, but in reality, the vast majority of Tamil speakers do not come into India, and they came into India from the north after, in a sense, they was pushed out of East Asia and Central Asia by the Chinese and the Indo-Europeans. But again, in a sense, we see two migrations. We see the Tamil migrating to India from the north, and we see the Telugu, Malayalam speakers coming in from the south. By 6000 BC, the Proto-Saharans lived in well-organized villages. There was little standing water, so the Proto-Saharans dug deep, large walk-in wells so people could walk down to the water. At these villages, cattle were present, plus the farmers grew domesticated six-row barley. Aridity arrived in the Sahara around 5,900 to 5,800 BC. In 5,800 BC, settled life returned to the Sahara. During this period, goats and domesticated emmer wheat is cultivated along with six-row barley. They were also cultivating millet, but Europeans don't like to talk about that too much. But see, the interesting thing is that while these Proto-Saharans were living up in the mountains, the highland regions of the Green Sahara, the Anu people, they in a sense had developed civilization in what we call Lower Egypt, which was mainly around the Delta region. They had already developed the ancient Egyptian civilization and the ancient Sumerian civilization, you see. But they were living in the valleys, and this was prior to another cataclysm, which basically, in a sense, separated the people. But while the Proto-Saharans were living up in the highlands, the Anu, or what we call the Pygmies today, they was ruling what became ancient Egypt, and they were also ruling what became the various cities in Mesopotamia that formed, Sumer and Akkad. Due to the richness of the flora and fauna in the Sahara 8,000 BP, ethnic groups in Middle Africa were semi-sedentary. Hunter-fisher-gatherers who engaged in the exploitation of the habitat. In the early period, the Proto-Saharans may have had a limited interest in the domestication of plants and animals. But it was not until the return of arid climate to the Sahara between 12,000 and 7,000 BC that the Proto-Saharans were forced to domesticate cattle and goats to ensure a reliable source of food. The early ability to find permanent sources of food and shelter during the Neolithic by the Proto-Dravidians and other Proto-Saharans led to increased domestic functioning of the women. You can see some of these, this rock art from the Sahara, and we can see some of these women, You can see some of the elaborate hairstyles. You can also see the head elongation among some of these women. But definitely you can view these varied hairstyles. Since hunting and the constant search for herds of game as a source of food was no longer that important, the stability of the hearth maintained by the women led to the development of a matriarchal system. In addition to a matrilineal pattern of inheritance among these people, women had equal rights to the men. Women created agriculture. Thus, the term Ma appears in the languages spoken by descendants of the Proto-Saharans. Yes. If you look in the Dravidian languages, the Manding language, you'll find in a sense that Ma not only denotes mother, like mama, ma, whatever. It also, in a sense, the word Ma in Tamil, in the Manding, Sumerian language, it also means earth or area. And this shows, in a sense, the important role because, see, hunting is very important. But, you can survive without eating meat. And so the ability of women, in a sense, to find those various grains that allowed us to survive. Okay, look at it in a sense, ancient civilization. We find that the first gods of many of the ancient people was the moon. Why would the moon be the god? Well, the moon was the god because the moon was associated with the woman. And the moon was associated with the woman because, see, the moon represented the woman because it was through the moon, in a sense, that the woman had the power on earth. And so we find, in a sense, is that the most important thing to women, was their man. And because the most important thing for the woman was their man, and therefore, in a sense, men were afraid of women. And, we were afraid of women because of the fact that the woman, she bled once a month. And even though she bled once a month, she never died. And this was scary to a man. This was scary to a man because we knew that from hunting, if we shot an animal with an arrow, that animal, once that animal lost the blood, that animal died. That animal died. But here it is where women who over a period of days would be bleeding and they didn't die. See? So then therefore, in a sense, you wasn't going to touch that woman if she was on her menstrual cycle. And so what the woman did is that she began to study the moon. She studied the phases of the moon. She knew that in a sense, the moon went through various stages over a period of days. And so women, in a sense, began to make the first calendar. And they made the first calendar based upon the fact that there was a regular cycle in terms of her menstrual cycle. And by, in a sense, studying the moon, she could know when her and her man could have, in a sense, sex. Yeah, it's all a simple thing like that. And then the same thing, the women, in a sense, they were the farming, and because women really loved the moon, because the moon allowed them to be able to count the days before they could be with their man, they made the first two. Yes, the first two that was made was the sit. And the sit is what? The sit is made in the half circle. And the half circle, like what? The moon. It's like the crescent moon, you see? So the first tool was created by women. The first calendar was created by women. And so then therefore you can see how, because of the fact, in the sense that they found the plants that not only nurtured us, but they found the plants in the sense that you could use to stay healthy. They found the plants that you could use, you see, in case somebody was sick. So you can see how women gained this role. But see, the whole point is that the woman, she didn't just say, hey, she just didn't overlord the man. She just didn't try to dominate her man. She didn't try to make her man feel inferior. She said, hey, bro, why don't you tend the cattle? Tend the cattle. And that made the man feel that he was just as important in society as the woman. But we always recognize that we need our women, you see. The European has taught us to be running away from our women. The European has taught us to be afraid of our women. The European has taught us that our women is a liability. I'm sorry for shouting, but I am. But in reality, your woman, in a sense, can give you whatever you want. Your woman is like a genie. If you love her and you allow her to love you back, anything you desire in the world is yours, within reason. An examination of the Proto-Saharan languages illustrate that the speakers of these languages lived in cities. The Proto-Saharan term would be Uru, and they had chiefs. The Proto-Saharan word for the chief was Sar. In addition to living in cities, the Proto-Saharans had built extensive roads called Sila. Yes. This may have been how some of their cities would have looked. They would have had their pyramids. These pyramids, they were places that produces energy. These Proto-Saharans, because of the fact that they came from a common mother culture, they had shared many of these words. And this would have been the type of cities that they would have been building. Yes. Look. We forget that in Egypt, they had to uncover the Sphinx. We forget that in Egypt every day, they're finding under the sand these beautiful monuments, these beautiful cities that the Egyptians built. Just think about what else is out there under the sand in that Sahara. You see? Think about the other great centers that are out there that we don't see from the surface, but because of the fact, in the sense that we have radar, we have other sources, that there's even more villages. And these Proto-Saharans, they knew about cities. They all had chiefs, and they built roads that connected them. The Proto-Saharan term for people or humanity was Oku. The mother of the family was called Amma or Ma, and the father was called Pa or Ba. The children, both boys and girls, were usually referred to as De, Di, or Du. They lived in houses called U or Lu. The Proto-Saharans were both farmers and sheep herders. Thus, we find in a sense that the word for sheep, Proto-Saharan word for sheep was kari. The word to cultivate was be. They used the hoe to cultivate their land. and they called this hole Pari. In addition, the Proto-Saharans kept dogs, which they called Ur. Yes, yes. And see, when I talk about Proto-Saharan terms, that meant that you're going to find these same words not just in Mandingo, not just in Tamil, but also in ancient Egyptian and even in the Elamite. See, that's because they came from a common mother culture, a culture that we can only see in our mind's eye. And we can only see in our mind's eye because so much of this culture was so fantastic. Their cities were so fantastic. Their cities were just so outstanding. It's just so hard. It's so hard to really understand because see, we've been conditioned to feel, we've been conditioned by Europeans to feel that the only thing that African people did, the only thing that people in India did, before the European came, okay, or the Muslims, I'll give something to the Muslims, but before the Europeans came, before the Muslims came, and by saying Muslim, they want to imply white, they said the only thing that black people could do was build huts. The only thing that black people, in a sense, could do was just try to follow a trail through the forest. But we see when we examine these languages, when we go and we try to find the Proto-Saharan term, Proto-Saharan, whenever you use the word proto, that means the original or the most ancient terms. But when we study these languages, the Mandingo language, Sumerian, Tamil, we find in the sense that they had kings, they had lands, they built cities, you see. So just look at this picture and imagine. This picture could be representing how those cities looked in the Proto-Sahara, see? But we'll never know until we can dig, and do more dealing. Many of the long-distance voyages made by the Proto-Saharans were made in search of precious metals. The Proto-Dravidians dominated trade in lapis lazuli for hundreds of years. As a result, they were familiar with mining. They therefore share the term for diggings: Dravidian Tulae, Manding Du, Diolo, and Sumerian Tool. You see, this is what you do in comparative linguistics. Here I'm giving you the terms for digging. In Dravidian or Tamil, we had Tule. In Manding, we have Du and Tiolo. And in Sumerian, we have Dual. And so then by looking at these words, we find in a sense that the Dravidian term Tule, we see a T, U, and an L. And then we find in a sense a Manding word for dig, we see a Tyolo, see? And then Sumerian, we see tool. So we can assume in a sense that the Proto-Sumerian term for digging, that would have been the original term or the mother language of the Dravidians, the Manding, and the Sumerians. The proto term for digging would have been what? Tool. And you see, that's why we use comparative linguistics, and we look at the words, we try to bring them together, and then we see what's happening. So then we find in a sense that these people, they were working with metals. They would have been just like this man. He would have been working with metals, melting the metals and forming these metals in the beautiful artifacts, you see, that represent their culture, represent their tools, you see. The Proto-Sahara was a dynamic place. It was a place of a beautiful civilization where all these people, they lived and they worked. And mostly, if you look at the rock art, you don't really see any rock art where the people are fighting each other, You see that most of the people are looking like they mind their own business. They had their own places. They had their own towns, and it was relatively packed. The other day I was talking to this person, and they said, Dr. Winters, B1 is very important. And they said B1 is very important because the fact is that, look at how the Egyptians were able to have their civilization for 3,000 years. They had little fights off and on with the Cushites, but for the most part, their civilization was stable, you see, because of the fact is that they understood that you have to be B1. You have to see yourself, as a unified people and not always be trying to look at the differences. So you got to avoid looking at the differences. Don't we do that when we deal with our friends? When we deal with our friends, we don't try to look at the negative aspects of our friends. We definitely don't try to look at the negative aspects of our mates. And if you're a man, you especially shouldn't. I mean, most men are fat and then they got shapely wives because their wives try to stay in shape and eat the right foods. And just think if the wife said, hey, you fat, lazy, get out of my damn face. Just think if women said that, but they have mercy on us. And they keep our fat asses. These people probably knew about blacksmithing. Tamil, the word in Tamil in a sense blacksmithy was irumbu. In Telugu we have inamu. In Manding we have numu or umu, forge. These Proto-Saharans were familiar with many metals, including copper. In Dravidian we find uruttiran, Sumerian urudu, in Manding kura or kute. And so then if we're gonna look at these words and try to compare them, we would see that the Proto-Sumerian term for forging metals was a routine. In Dravidian, Kane, Kanam, Sumerian, Kish, Kin, and Manding, Sanis. That would be, in a sense, the various words. So again, you can see that this whole idea of smelting metals, this was already well developed during the Proto-Saharan times. As a result of numerous lakes, streams, and rivers in Middle Africa, the Proto-Saharans had a highly developed boat technology. Yes. The Proto-Saharans took their red and black pottery, boat technology, and writing to other parts of the world because, see, once they left, in a sense, the Proto-Sahara, the Green Sahara, they went into other parts of the world. The Dogon. The modern representatives of Proto-Saharans include the Dravidians, the Dogon, and Mandi-speaking people of India and West Africa, respectively. Also, Africans speak Tamil, a Dravidian language, in Chad. Yes, people in Cameroons, they speak Tamil. So here's a picture of native Dravidian people. Look, these are native Dravidian people from India, and you can see that every Dravidian does not have straight hair. You see, they had various forms of hair and various types. And see, these people have been there at least for 3,000-4,000 years. See? And so then that's why you have to make sure that you don't try to separate them. And then in Cameroon today, they found that in Cameroon, many of the people in Cameroon still speak Tamil. This observant Tamil speaker, he was able to, in a sense, he saw this video that PBS, Public Broadcasting Company, had produced. And he was able to note that many of the words that these people in Cameroon were using were Tamil words. See, so even though Dravidian people, live in India today, we know, in a sense, based upon the fact that they have shared words. You see, shared grammatical features, shared DNA, and also the fact that Tamil is still spoken in Africa today. Shows this continuity. Again, we come back to first sight consciousness. And first sight consciousness mean that because of the fact that we had these similar cultures, we continue to have access to these cultures at this late point in time. The archaeological and linguistic evidence make it clear that the Dravidians, Manding, and Sumerian languages diverged from a common ancestral speech community, which lived in the Proto-Sahara, and that at the time of separation, the people had achieved a high level of civilization. The cultural and ethnic affinities of the Proto-Saharans encouraged the development of well-organized trade relations between these people in Africa and Asia. From the 4th to the 3rd millennium BC, an extensive trade network connected the Proto-Saharans from Middle Africa to the Indus Valley. This view is supported by the vessels from the IVB-1 workshop at Tipiyakya. These vessels have a uniform shape and design. Vessels sharing this style are distributed from Egypt to Soviet Uzbekistan and the Indus Valley. The discovery of the intercultural style vessels from Middle Africa, Sumer, and the Indus Valley suggests a shared ideological identity among the people that is supported by the linguistic data found in this presentation. So there's the references. So again, if you join my Patreon, and you'll find these references that can lead you to finding out more about the unity between these cultures. So, join my Patreon. Go to my Patreon to see the slides. I'm at Twitter, Dr. Clyde Winters 8. You can follow me on TikTok.com at Clyde Winters 3. And on TikTok, I think some of my shorts have reached 1 million views. Crazy, And then again, you're on my YouTube page, Clyde Winters YouTube videos. Please check the subscribe button. Subscribe. Let's make the channel move. Also, in a sense, hit the bell so that whenever I'm about to do another video, you will know when it's going to be presented. Also, you can order my books at Amazon.com. Okay, again, get my book, History and Culture of the Black Aboriginals in America. Don't be square. And, this book is very important, and you're going to find out a whole lot, in a sense, from this book, And, let's let's look at a few, let's check out a few videos. How you doing, Karen Van Zen, Hayuya, Trolina Gibson, and Dorville? What up, though?
So dreamy.
Hey, I've just written a new book, History and Culture of the Black Aboriginals of America. Yes, I've written a new book. This book is called History and Culture of Afro-Americans. It's about the Aboriginal Americans. It's about the first people who inhabited America. Many people don't know about our great culture, this super culture that we created, but I discuss this book. In 489 pages, you'll find out so much information, great information, about, in a sense, what the Aboriginal foundational Black Americans did. You're going to see, in a sense, that Black people contributed much here. When the first Europeans got here, that's what they found. Yes, they found Black Aboriginals inhabiting the Americas. It was the Black Aboriginals that built this country. This is why you had to get my book. Get my book, History and Culture of the Aboriginal Blacks of the Americas. In this book, you will find out the truth. You will know what we created. You will know who we are. Get this book. Buy it now. Today is today. We need to homeschool our children due to white supremacy. In many states, education departments are passing laws to deny our children from learning the history of foundational Black Americans. Today, you can learn how to organize and teach your children in a homeschool. In my book, A Guide to Homeschool Foundational Black Americans. You can use my book, History of Blacks in America from Prehistory to 1877, to teach our children their history here in the United States. You can use my book to teach world history. And this book I've written is called The World History of the Black World. This will teach your children about every Black civilization in the world. Get this book. The time is now. Get these books to teach your children about their greatness, to prevent them from losing confidence in their own ability to learn and be successful future adults in employment and education. Hey, it's time for the Afrocentric Research Course led by Dr. Clyde Winters. Join this course. The 15-week Afrocentric Research Course will begin on April 16, 2024. It will last between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can go to clyde98.gumroad.com/L/ to join the class. The Afrocentric Research Course is vital. In this course, you will learn how to do research. It will help you to write and conduct research. You see, you're going to learn how to do research. You're going to learn how to interpret research literature. And you're going to learn how to write books and articles. Yes, books and articles. And you're going to learn how to use research data to improve your small business. Already, in a sense, many former students have begun to write articles and books that they published. You too can write these articles and books after you take my class. You can make a single payment of $599. You can go to clyde98.gumroad.com/L/ZBWRJR, or You can make monthly payments. Go to Clyde98.Gumroad. Join me for my 15-week Afrocentric Researcher Course. It's going to be the class that's going to help you to really be a success. It's going to start April 16, 2024, 7 to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. Join us. Join us in this class. Learn how to do research. It's up to you. I really do hope that that you guys will kind of join my research class, because it's 15 weeks. That means it's 30 hours of instruction. 30 hours of instruction. And just think about that. You're going to get 30 hours of instruction. You're going to learn how to do research. You're going to learn how, in a sense, to interpret research. And you're going to learn what allows me to be able to do the research I do. And you're going to become what's called a pluridisciplinarian. What I mean by being a pluridisciplinarian, you're not only, in a sense, going to understand how people write anthropological articles. You're going to understand also how to write historical articles, how to write linguistic articles, how to interpret and write population genetic articles. All of this is you're going to learn in that class. And just think about this. That is 30 hours of instruction, you see. Plus, you're going to have hands-on exercises. And by the time you leave this class, by the time you leave my research class, if you really, in a sense, do the work, do the lessons, you're going to be able to write not only, in a sense, quantitative, but also qualitative articles. Yes. You're going to be able to write quantitative and qualitative articles. And see, what you're going to be able to do, in a sense, is that this can help you to be able to write books, articles in the future. Let's say if you're in a PhD program, or if you had to write your master's thesis, this can help you. And it can also help you, in a sense, if you want to be able to learn how to do the research and make your business a success. So join my class. You can order my books, The Ancient Black Civilization of Asia, Black History Gem Essays, Volumes 1 and 2, and The World History of the Black Race. You can order all of these books at Amazon.com. You can get my books on the Ma civilization. If you really want to find out more about the Ma civilization, get my book, Before Egypt, the Ma Confederation, Africa's First Civilization. Get this book. You see, it explains, when you get this book, it will explain all about these civilizations, all about how these civilizations rose, and how the Sumerians, the Dravidians, Mandi speakers all came from the same culture. Get my book on African origin and world writing systems, and get my other books and stuff, so that you can understand the language character that goes back to these ancient periods, you see. And we're going to come back later. Later, we're going to come back to these things and, be one. And, because we had to be B1. And it's by being B1 that we're able, in a sense, to really support each other. We're able, in a sense, to understand the truths, you see. We're going to come back later, and we'll talk about Yoshimad and some of his contributions. He made my introduction. And we're going to come back, and we're going to discuss these things. Right now, and Joan asked the question, Dr. Wynn, is any relationship to the Pope's Metra hat shaped by? Yeah, it is, because if you notice, in a sense, it really goes back to the hats, the kind of wizard hats, in the sense that they wore back in the day, that the wise people made in Mesopotamia, And here's here's a comment by Timeless Voices JP. Please take the research course and become informative and trained in how to conduct research. It's worth the time investment. Yes, please join the class. You'll get a lot out of it. How you doing, Natty? B1, So again, I've tried to talk a little bit about the Proto-Sahara. Tomorrow, join me tomorrow night at 7 p.m. I'm going to also do a presentation. This presentation is also going to relate to how to study, how to understand these various points of ancient history. Now, if you have any questions about what we've discussed so far, please please, please, you can ask me the questions now. We have a little time left. And so if you want to, in a sense, ask me questions, please put them in the chat, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. So feel free. Okay, let me see if there's anything in the chat. Um, how you doing, BM Walker the Honk? Will you be doing another Center of the Earth presentation? No, I did one, and I did one in a sense earlier. You can find it on my channel. What was it that you were interested in really learning about the Center of the Earth? The Center of the Earth. Center of the Earth is it's complicated and interesting. They say a lot of different groups are there. Some people say the Niplums are still there. Then we know. Then they say the Germans have a base. The Nazis have a base there. We know that's where the Anu. That's where the Anu. That's where they. That's where they store their flying saucers. Because the so-called people, the so-called grays, they're not really gray. They're little brown people, and these little brown people are the Anu, and they live in the center of the earth. But if you had a specific thing that you're interested in, send me an email. My email is omac9ac little o omac 982000 at yahoo.com. Okay, Joan Coromandi said, Dr. Winters, any relation of the Ma Confederation and the early Christians' use of fish as their symbol? I don't think so. I think that the fish in a sense, that symbol related to Christianity, it has a different meaning. Right now I can't think of what the meaning is. But when they talked about the ancient civilizations, when they used the fish, they were mainly using the fish as a symbol to recognize the relationship between man being able to master the land. They wanted to take the solid ground. They wanted to remove the water from the solid ground so that people, in a sense, would be able to form, habitation sites, on the plain, surfaces. Because see, back in the day, in a sense, people lived on mounds to avoid it. Okay, Natty asked the question, said, any information on the mummies from the Canary Islands? The mummies on the Canary Islands, like the mummies in South America, these were mainly natural mummies. These mummies are the result of natural effects over time, which led to these dead bodies mummifying. Whereas when we think about the mummies of ancient Egypt, especially the mummies related to the dynastic period, these were dead bodies who after the person died, they used the scientific method and scientific principles to be able, in a sense, be able in a sense to mummify the body so that the bodies would last, because they were doing the mummification in ancient Egypt. So in a sense that so because of the fact, in the sense that they were using these things in Egypt to preserve the body, because they felt that it was an afterlife and they wanted to be prepared for the afterlife. Okay, Raj Omar Kush says, what was the term that the Dravidians referred to themselves as? They referred themselves as Maga. But their ancient gods, all the ancient gods of the Dravidians were either like Mao, Maal, the superior Mao, Ma, Ammon. So that's how we see Ma in relationship to the Dravidian people. See, we often, as I said before, I'll do a presentation maybe soon when I'll talk about how the Dravidians migrated out of the Nile Valley. You know, their migrations into Central Asia and East Asia, and their migration across Kumari Nadu into southern India. You see, but you know, now a lot of the research, a lot of people, a lot of the Dravidian people today, you have a dichotomy. You have a dichotomy in terms of the Brahmins and the average Dravidians. Many of the Brahmins who are in southern India today, there's always been a conflict in terms of how the Brahmins tried to represent history and how the Dravidian people themselves, the common man, the grassroots, represented history. Because see, many of the Brahmin, many of their ancestors go back to the Indo-European or the Indo-European, Hindus, as opposed to the Dravidian Hindus. See, Hinduism in a sense, we find that Hinduism is practiced different among the Indo-Europeans and, in a sense, the people in the sense of southern India. Okay, Nadi, the terrible caste system. Yeah, the caste system is terrible, but black people have always had a caste system. The only thing is that they took it to the extreme in India. You see, because see, the terrible caste system that exists in India today is basically a caste system that the Indo-Europeans adopted. And what they tried to adopt is they wanted to have a caste system in which they could keep down the Dalits and the Dravidians, who were, in a sense, much darker than them. You see, because the Indo-Europeans, when they came into India, see, now in India, they try to teach that the light-skinned Indo-Europeans, that they entered, in a sense, India, or that they always lived in India. But the research shows that the Indo-European, or the light-skinned Indians, they began, in a sense, to migrate from Iran into ancient India only around 1000 BC. So they were part of that same expansion of many of the Proto-Caucasians, who were the people of the sea. Then you also see this migration around about 400 years later of these Iranians who began, in a sense, to migrate into India. And these people, in a sense, were the first Indo-Europeans. And these Indo-Europeans, because of the fact, in a sense, that when they came to India, they found India dominated by black people. They in a sense felt they had to find some way to keep black people down because they didn't want that competition. You see, even though they weren't really super light, they still developed a caste system in which, in a sense, they were going to keep down the Dashas, and the various original people who ruled in India. And that would have been the dark-skinned people. And that's why that caste system is so terrible. And that's why it's based upon color. It's based upon hue. See, and again, as I said earlier, many of the Brahmins, because the fact, in a sense, many of the Brahmins represent those North Indians that came into South India. That's one of the reasons why we find that there's been this conflict in terms of studying history and knowing history from a Brahmanic perspective as opposed to a grassroots perspective. Okay, so Russell Marcus says, so Ma is related to Maha, great, the Mahabharata, great warriors. Yeah, you know Maha. Again, we see this Ma. Ma was just a term. The Ma, as I said earlier, was a general term in African and Dravidian languages to denote greatness. Any other questions? Okay, Nadi says the Kali statue in the British Museum. She has her foot on a white-skinned enemy. That's interesting. I haven't never seen the statue, But Kali was the god of war among many Dravidians. But it's much of the artwork today that comes from India is basically done from an Indo-European perspective. Because see, the Indo-Europeans, they never really was able to conquer, the Dravidians. But what happened is that when the British took over, the British made it possible for the Indo-Europeans to have much more control. And now they're the ones who control the society today. But if you notice, the Indo-Europeans, they're trying to say the Dravidians didn't have any history. The Dravidians, see, some of the earliest cultures in India all go back to Dravidian times, especially the megalithic culture. That's where they use the red and black pottery. And so what the Indo-Europeans are trying to say, that they're trying to deny the antiquity of many Dravidian sites in South India. Yes, the Indo-European state is trying to make sure that the people who live in South India are not able, in a sense, to put out the real dates for the monuments and sites that have been found down there. And see, because the Indo-Europeans, they can't compete with the civilization formed by the Dravidians, and they can't compete with the civilization formed by the Muslims when they ruled India. And so then, therefore, the Indo-Europeans try to limit any recognition of these earlier cultures. And because the state controls the budget for archaeological research, they try to make sure that in South India, that the archaeological sites are given dates that are much later than they really existed. And it's again this jealousy. And see, just like Caucasians are trying to make the entire history of the world a history of white people, then the Indo-Europeans, Indo-Aryans that rule in India, they want to try to make make India a civilization that was created by light-skinned people, which is really false. And now he says, yeah, they don't show it much. No, they wouldn't want to show this statue. They don't want people to see this. Okay, here's a question. Razomir Kush says, since the Sumerians called the Kamiti Magan, did they ever call themselves Magan? No, they called themselves Sagiga. Their name, that's just what they called, in a sense. They called themselves the black-headed people. They also had a name that related to. They called themselves Magara. I said it earlier, Magara. But the Sumerians, in a sense, they recognized that they were, in a sense, descendants of the Ma people. Okay, Jones says, why do the people with no true history always claim everybody else's have none? Well, they do this, in a sense, because they don't want you to be able to really do your research. They don't want you to be able, in a sense, to know who you are, because, see, people feel that the only way they can dominate you is by making you believe that you have no history, you have no culture. For example, take, for instance, that when the Europeans, American culture is the culture of the foundation of Black Americans. But here's the kicker. When the Europeans came over here, they wanted to continue practices that they did in Europe. The dance, the music. That's why, the best music is supposed to be opera and all that type of stuff. Because of the fact that when these Europeans came over here, they wanted to bring over here their European heritage. What happened is that American culture became Black culture. The food they eat, chicken, Southern cooking, it was what the Black people did. The music that was created over here, from the country music, jazz music, soul, hip hop. We created, in a sense, all these various musics. So American music is our music. The food is our music. The language over here, the best speakers of English, the best speakers of English are not, they never speak of any white people being the best speakers of English. They always identify the best speakers of English as who? Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Jesse Jackson, and the greatest The greatest of all speakers was who? It's James L. Jones. James L. Jones has such a mastery of the English language. He's almost like Paul Robeson in the sense that he has this skill, this ability to make the language become alive, make it become real. But again, in the sense is that people have to do that. They have to make you feel inferior so that they can feel in a sense that they're superior. And see, because we live in a white supremacist society, and this white supremacist society, it has to make you begin to really feel that you're worthless. You have to be, in a sense, feel that you can't compete with them because they can't compete with you. And so if they teach you in a sense that you have a great history, if they teach you that you've contributed so much to reality, if you know in a sense that the culture is yours, the history is yours, then therefore they would lose in a sense their standing as being superior to you. See, it is very important to understand that Europeans created what we found to be, critical race theory. And what is critical race theory? Critical race theory is number one, white people hate you. Number two, white people want to kill you. Number three, white people created racism. They created racism because racism relates to competition between races, you see? And so then they created number four. They created, in a sense, a race system in which there's competition, but they're always going to win. They're always going to be the one that wins because they made it in a sense so that you are not going to win the race. You're not going to be able, in a sense, to dominate them. And one of the ways that they're able to make sure that you never dominate them is to make you feel that you're too inferior. And that by you, in a sense, by you being inferior, then you can't compete with them. I mean, if they open up anything to us, what can they compete with? They can't compete with us in basketball, football, no sport. And they're definitely and think about the fact is that now we know when they did that movie about those sisters who worked at NASA, that the astronauts, they trusted the sisters in their calculations more than they trusted a computer. What does that tell you? You see, that tells you that it's impossible. We created, as part of our culture, we created the resistor. Every electronic instrument, it runs off the resistor. We created the first cell phone. Yeah, it was kind of clunky and really big, but they took that cell phone that we created, and then they made it into the cell phones that we use today. Yes. We were the first ones to invent these things. And they just in a sense made it look nice. They made it look a little bit prettier. We're the ones in the sense that made the first laptop computer that I'm using right now. We're the one who we made in a sense everything. We're the ones that they had the World Wide Web has been out for years. They invented the World Wide Web. They invented the World Wide Web so that they could communicate with each other if there was a nuclear war. But what happened? It was some brothers in the sense that made it so that we're able in a sense that we're able to use the computer. Now we can use the computer, but see, yes, brothers aren't making the money for it, you see. But brothers aren't making the money. Yes, they stole it from us, or they paid us money and they get the credit for it. And you can't blame a brother. I mean, you'd rather get a couple of dollars than no dollars, see? But see, they need us. We don't need them. They need us. We don't need them. That's why if they see a Black Wall Street, they got to destroy it. That's why they have these highways running through downtown. We used to have Bronzeville used to have a lot of businesses. And they built the Dan Ryan subway right through the Black neighborhoods. Why? So that they're able, in a sense, to make sure that we never can compete with them. See, and they're not going to take any chances. That's why you can't get loans. The other day, our Professor Black was talking about how they invented this program to give Black businessmen money, and only black people got $50 million, and Latinos got $325 million. They play tricks with us because they can't compete with us, and because they can't compete with us, Joan, that's why they have to hide our history. That's how they have to deny who we are. That's why they have to make us, in a sense, feel inferior. And they hope and they pray that if we can feel inferior, we will not compete with them, and that they can be able, in a sense, to survive. See, they don't feel that they can make it on the even playing ground. They feel, in the sense, that they got to always set the race. You see, racism begins with the word race, and because it's about race, that means that we're dealing with competition between two or more groups, and they see, in a sense, that since they're handicapped, since we have this intrinsic connection to the Creator, we're able to access the Akashic records. And think about that. We were the first human beings. That means that our knowledge goes back. That means our knowledge goes back what? Our knowledge goes all the way back to 200,000 years ago. And just think that you can draw on that knowledge. He can't draw on that knowledge. He doesn't have, the first Caucasians, they didn't leave the caves until 1000 BC. Yes, 1000 BC. So you're competing with people that have only been on the surface for 6,000, maybe 7,000 years. 1000 BC, about 7,000 years. And you've been here for 200,000 years. There's no way they can compete with you. See? There's no way to compete with you. That's why they need it. That's why they don't want you to know ancient history. A lot of people say, Dr. Winters, why don't you talk about contemporary events? Why don't you talk about regular stuff? Why do you just spend your time talking about ancient history? I like ancient history because ancient history shows you what you can do, because it shows you what you did. And if you did it in the past, you can do it again today. See, I teach these things so that you will know that you can have the confidence that if you want to be that engineer, if you want to be that scientist, that you can do these things, and that it's not impossible to be done. And it's very important, And this is interesting. Natty says, a black man named Jesse Russell came up with the 4G concept. Hey, like I said, we invented the cell phone. We made the computers work. See, the European, in a sense, he can't do anything without us. Look. Since the European wanted us to concentrate on basketball, football, they haven't had any technological advances. And then the technological advancement, like the brother who was working on a cheaper way to run motor vehicles, he got killed up in New York, by some racists. We got another brother who can make water out of the air. We had so many people, in the sense that it made engines that could run a car just off water, just to show our technology. Do you really think that they're going to allow you? One brother asked me, said, Dr. Winters, why don't we try to get his reparations another state? And if we had our own state, then we'll be straight. And I told the brother, no, you don't want another state, because if you get another state, they're going to just try to attack the state. Because if we had another state, ever since the Jetsons was a TV show that I looked at when I was a kid growing up. And then the Jetsons, they had airplane cars, instead of driving, they were in airplane. They were in flying cars and all that type of stuff. And they had all this technology. Just think about it. Natty. Think about it, Joan. Think about if we had our own land, it would be so technologically advanced that they would want to come in and they would want to start a war and try to fight us, because they would be so jealous. They can't compete. They can't compete. They can't allow us to really be our natural selves. They can't allow us to be able, in a sense, to do the things that we can do, you see? That's why they want to do everything. That's why even now they're trying to cut down diversity programs. You see, even though the diversity programs, when they cut them down, they're not going to affect us anyway, because most of us have had to have government jobs, sadly, but it's the truth. Most of us have lived off government jobs. You see, yes, Karen, you're absolutely correct, Karen. Karen says they want to take everything. They do want to take everything. You see, but Karen, the only reason that they haven't been able to take everything so far is because we have a special relationship with the Almighty, you see. Whereas they try to run away from God, whereas they try to teach you God don't exist, we've been taught in the sense that God is there, and we know God is present. Because I already tell you what's the first rule of critical race theory. White people hate you. The second rule, white people want to kill you. They wiped out the Tasmanians. They wiped out many tribes over here. See, but we're still standing. We're still standing because of the fact, in the sense that God is here with us, and that God protects us. Yeah, thank you, Natty. Up in Buffalo is a hydrogen motor. That's right. See, that's it. That's why they killed that brother. That's why that brother had to be killed. The jealousy, the fear. You see, but as God stands in heaven, they will never be able to take everything away from us, Karen. Because the fact is this, is that we are the chosen people of God. See, some people want to say, oh, I got to be a Hebrew to be a chosen person. Or I got to be a Catholic, or I got to be a Hebrew or more, or whatever. No, we are foundational Black Americans, are the chosen people of God. We're the chosen people of God because we are the new Egyptians. Even though we don't have a country where we control, even though in a sense we're up under these people, we are the chosen people of God, and we're the ones that's made this country what it is today. We're the ones, in a sense, that made this world the way it is today. Every great thing that exists, that allow us to have an easy life, comes from what we created over here. Yes, what we created over here. It is scary. This brother says, Kickabout Fett says, how did the indigenous people of the planet react to the first encounters with those fresh out of the caves all those years ago? Thank you. The way they did, in a sense, is that first they saw them in fear. They ran away from them. And what did they do? The Europeans, in a sense, they pretended, okay, that's cool. If you're afraid of us, we're still going to work. They look different from us. They look different than they did today. And because they look different than they did today, what they did, in a sense, they tried to marry or kidnap our women, and then they made themselves look a little bit more presentable, And but the thing is this, is that the contact was not cool. But if you notice that you find the earliest representatives of Caucasian people, they're included in the army of the people of the sea when the people of the sea attacked the ancient Egyptians, And when they attacked the ancient Egyptians, the Egyptians conquered the people of the sea, and they placed a lot of these Caucasians in Lebanon, and those were the people that the Jews, in a sense, that the ancient Hebrews were fighting to take over the land, and that's a very important thing, and this is so true. This is so true, and we forget, Karen. We forget that we are beautiful, smart, and hardworking. Yes, we forget this. And we forget this because the fact, in a sense, that we've been conditioned to feel that we're worthless, that we're not, in a sense important, and we are important. But again, let's we're going to get this. We're going to deal with these things, and I like Yoshi Mod. Yoshi Mod is doing so much. He's contributing so much. I hope you guys will kind of buy some of these PDFs.
KB1 family, I'm excited to tell you about something super special and educational. This Black History Month, Yoshi Mod has created an amazing collection of PDFs all about incredible Black inventors and their amazing achievements. Do you know about Mae Jemison, the first FBA woman astronaut? Or Percy Julian, who made groundbreaking discoveries in chemistry? These are just a couple of the amazing people you'll learn about in these PDFs. These PDFs are perfect for teachers, homeschooling parents, or anyone who loves learning. They're filled with fun facts and inspiring stories that make learning about Black history exciting. Only $3 for a journey through history with some of the most influential Black inventors and scientists. Just click the link in the description to grab your copies from Yoshi Mod's Gumroad store. And don't forget to check out Yoshi Mod's other amazing creations and music on Spotify. Let's learn, have fun, and celebrate Black history together.
Try to get those PDFs. At the beginning of this show, I played the video. Clyde Winters. That was done by Yoshi Mod. Yoshi Mod, the genius. He can make your videos. He can make He can make things that can be very popular. One of the things that he could do is that he could help you if, like, a lot of people are going to be having family reunions this summer, and Yoshi Mod, he can write, in a sense. He could do a biography of you. He could do a biography of your family. He could, in a sense, be able, in a sense, for you guys when you have your family reunion this year, that you can have, in a sense, an MP. You can have a video that can really outline the important aspects of your family, where your name come from, and things like this. These are some of the services that the genius Yoshi Mod can offer.
At Yoshi Mod Productions, we're here to take your brand and creativity to new heights. From EPKs to AI commercials, animated music commercials to animated AI bios, book covers to picture flyers, and so much more, we've got you covered. Our team is dedicated to delivering high-quality, cutting-edge designs that leave a lasting impression. And for our valued clients, we offer exceptional creativity, a customer-centric approach, and work that reflects the latest trends and technologies. Just about making art, we're about creating experiences. Your brand, your vision, our artistry. Professionalism and reliability are the cornerstones of everything we do. We're more than a service, we're your creative partners. If you're ready to make your brand shine, look no further than Yoshi Mod Productions. Join us in the journey of creativity. Contact us today and let's make your vision a reality.
I hope that you guys will be supportive. And Karen, I think that's a good idea. I want some for my little nephews. Yes. Get some of those PDFs. Family, thank you guys for showing up. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. Tomorrow evening, I'm going to do another presentation, and I'm going to do a presentation, in a sense, that will also deal with history. So join me tomorrow, 7 p.m. Same place, same station. You guys have a great evening. Bye. So long.